thank you for accepting our interview.
Thank you for the invite.
Could you briefly introduce yourself and introduce your organization, Charlie's Angel, and tell us what inspired you to found Charlie's Angel?
Sure. So my name's Tasha. I was born and raised in London. I moved to Israel when I was in my mid-20s. I just felt a deep calling that this is where I was supposed to be. And it hasn't been it hasn't been the easiest of journeys, because it's not the easiest place to live, but the quality of life here to me was exactly what I wanted to be a part of. So Chayal's Angels is the organisation I founded this year. It's a play on Charlie's Angels, obviously, and the name means the soldiers' angels, or the angels of the soldiers is how it's written in Hebrew. And the reason we named it this is because a lot of Jewish people around the world who don't speak Hebrew would recognize the word Chayal, which means soldier in English, but they don't know that the plural word for it is Chayalim. So we anglified it and we took a play on Charlie's Angels to make people remember the name, and we went with Chayal's Angels. Or in English, you could say Child's Angels. And what we do is we take holistic treatments to the reservist soldiers around the northern parts of Israel. And we take everything from physiotherapy, chiropractic treatment, massage therapy, acupuncture, sound healing, energy healing, yoga, anything that is going to collectively work with it. And the goal of what we do is that we really believe in the phrase, we are one. That is the fundamental of what I believe in everything, from community to healing to seeing the person. And when we go to bases, each soldier doesn't get just one treatment. They get a range of treatments, somewhere between 3 and 6 treatments on a day. So they might have a sound healing session, an acupuncture session, a chiropractic session, and a massage. And then that way, at the end of the day, the difference in their face is huge, because we're actually holistically looking at the whole person, and we get to bring in all kinds of treatments together to work.
So why you particular focus on soldier? There are so many people in need. Why is particular for soldier?
Well, when October 7th happened, I felt a deep calling that I needed to get out and help our soldiers. One of the main reasons was a dear friend of mine lost her brother on that day, who was at an army base in the south. And he was kind of my little brother in life. I've known him his whole life. He was just 20 years old when he was killed. And I found out on the morning of the 8th that he didn't make it. We'd been checking in all day. He'd sent a message to his sister at 6:30 in the morning on October 7th. And all day I was like, have we heard any more from him? Where is he? But something inside, so how best to explain it? Nothing like October 7th has ever happened to our nation or to our country. Certainly not since the Holocaust. And the level of shock and despair we were all in, and trying to find out where our friends were, where our family were, this is a very small country. It's the size of New Jersey. So everybody knows multiple people in the army at the same time. And I was at home on October 7th I was supposed to have been in the south, but something told me to stay at home. And I couldn't take the stress. And I decided there was no way that I could sit down at home. And there was no way that I could go back to work tomorrow. It just wasn't going to be. So I'm not married, and I decided to utilize my freedom and my car. And I started calling my friends around the area, and I said, whose husband needs a ride to reserve duty? Because hundreds of thousands of reservists, over 300,000 reservists, got up, grabbed a gun, and went into service from October 7th. And so the whole country was in chaos. So I just started driving soldiers around. And then it became equipment and food and helping deliver things to the displaced families, all the people from the north and the south who'd been moved suddenly out of their homes. They needed help, and things were being donated everywhere. So I offered my phone number out, and I was getting about 15 or 20 phone calls a day. And I suddenly found myself driving around the country for 12 to 14 hours every single day. I very quickly realized that the best way to deliver actual help to the country was to pick a lane. Everybody had to pick a lane. Were you going to work with the Nova survivors? Were you going to work with the people who were displaced from the south? Were you going to work with the people displaced from the north? What were you going to do to help? Because if you tried to help everywhere, you weren't going to achieve anything, because the entire country needed help overnight. And I decided that reservists were where I wanted to focus. And I think it's probably because a huge amount of my friends' husbands got called into reserve duty overnight. And all of a sudden, all my friends became army wives. We didn't sign up for that. We just moved to Israel, we fall in love with someone or whatever it is, and you get married and suddenly you're an army wife with 3 kids at home. What do you do? One of my close friends who I grew up with in England, lives around the corner from me. She was pregnant, 37 weeks pregnant with her 4th child. And her husband got called into reservist duty. And suddenly I found myself being her backup birthing partner. And I just felt like I had to help this. I had to do something. So I suppose that's where it started. And then I was focusing on the north because of where I live in the country. It meant I could do multiple rounds every day to the north and back. And it was 99% reservists in the north at the time, because all of the active IDF soldiers were down in the south or in the West Bank, Judea and Samaria, or in the intelligence bases, etc. And it was chaos the first few weeks. It was chaos. Our men didn't have enough food. They didn't have mattresses. There was there was roads in the north lined with tents on the side of the road. And I was watching our soldiers suddenly taking showers under fire hydrants at gas stations. It was pure chaos. And I just thought, okay. So I continued to go to the north with food and equipment every day. I was being given stuff to deliver. And a few weeks in, the soldiers asked me to sit and have coffee with them. And there was 2 reasons for this. What most people weren't aware of was that from October 8th, Hezbollah, the terrorist organization in Lebanon, were attacking the north, as was from Syria. And we were literally having to run to shelters from rockets multiple times a day. So one was, it's too dangerous, you need to stay here for a bit until we know it's safe for you to get back on the road. And the other reason was, there's a bit of a joke in Israel that when you go into reserve duty, which is active until the age of 41, and then you can choose to continue it. So you do the army at 18, 19 years old. Men do 3 years, women do just over 2 years. And then you stay in reserve duty. Not every single unit, it depends what your job was. If you were working in an office or if you were in the Navy, there's not really reserve duty because they don't need it. Yeah. But in all the other fields there are. So until the age of 41, you go to reserve duty to I think it's about 3 weeks a year to keep your training up. And the joke of it is, it's boring. You sit around, you've got a lot of waiting to do, you're not going to do very much. It's just active training to keep you going kind of thing, keep you up to date. So that's what, when everything happened and we were in such a state of shock, all the reservists were telling their families, it's reserve duty. We're not going to be doing anything. Don't worry, we're safe. We're not going into combat. We're fine. We're calm. We're just hanging out. Whereas that wasn't actually what was happening. But we were all just trying to calm everybody down as much as we could. And I found that they wanted to talk. They wanted to tell the truth of what was happening in them. And so I ended up at every base I was doing deliveries, which was about 5 or 6 bases a day. I sat and had coffee with them. And we talked for about an hour, and I could see how much trauma they were in, like we all were. And I could see that their bodies were starting to really hurt. Suddenly they'd been thrown from family life, from office life. Most of these people are in their 30s and 40s. I mean, I was dealing with reservists up until their 70s. And suddenly you're being thrown into the middle of chaos. And of course your body's hurting. I mean, I don't go to a gym. So it made sense. My body was hurting. And I wanted to help them. So I had heard that there was groups of massage therapists around helping the soldiers. I got some numbers. I phoned them. I asked them to come to my guys. And they said, we can't come to the north. We have to go to Gaza. They need us. And I said, so do the guys in the north? And they said, not as much as the guys in the south. So I just decided to be the person to take charge and help. That's kind of just my personality. I put a call out on social media and said, who's a practitioner? do you want to help me? Let's go help our soldiers. On October 27th, I took 3 practitioners, a chiropractor and 2 massage therapists, to a base at the top of Mount Hermon, which is the highest part of Israel. And we served 100 soldiers that day with as much as we could. And I suddenly very quickly realized we were onto something. And before I knew it, I had 5 volunteers, 10 volunteers, 15 volunteers, 20 volunteers. And the group kept growing, people kept joining. And we were out giving treatments all day, every day, 5 days a week, basically. And I had a tiny little car. I borrowed a bunch of massage tables off people and I strapped them to my roof and I squeezed as many people in as I could. And we just went to base and we just helped. And, you know, at the beginning, everyone's like, how did you do this? And I'm like, well, I probably had about 20 or 25 soldiers' numbers in my phone already from just doing deliveries. And I just called them and I said, can I come and help you? And most of them said, please. And then I would just walk up to any soldier I saw in gas stations or restaurants or anywhere that I was stopping around the north, mostly gas stations, and handed out my number and said, this is what I'm doing, I want to help you. And the calls just came and they never stopped. To this day, they never stopped.
Wow.
So that's how we got started, and that's why I chose soldiers, because I just saw that we had to pick a lane. And I have a lot of damage in my body. I have 7.5 damaged discs. I've had major surgeries. I've got screws and metal in my spine. I've had a lot of trauma from it. I had to learn to walk again. And I also have complex post-trauma. I've also experienced suicide attempts in my life, which is a topic that people don't feel comfortable talking about, but that I'm not shy about talking about, because I believe I can help save other people from being open about my experience. And I'm incredibly grateful for the people who saved my life and helped me become whole and become the woman I always wanted to be. And I saw this deep pain in people, and I thought, we're going to lose a lot of people to self-harm and suicide, and I need to help. And that's how it started.
That's so meaningful. So, what kind of challenge that Charlie's Angel are facing in the early stage or even at the moment? So, how can you overcome, or your team can overcome those like problems or challenge?
Well, from the very beginning, it was, how am I going to fuel the car? I was putting in 3 tanks of gas a day. I suddenly wasn't working at all. I haven't earned a penny since October 7th, 2023. So I opened up social media and I said, hi, if you know me, I don't like to ask for money for anything, but who wants to help me here? And people from around the world were sending money to help me keep the car on the road. That was a big challenge for me, to not just only be able to find a way to take money from people for this, but to ask for money. It's not my natural form. I'm very proud of the fact that I've financially supported myself since I was 17. And yeah, that was a difficult thing from my personal aspect. Another challenge from the beginning was finding people who were comfortable to come up to the north, knowing that we had experienced rockets falling 100 meters or so from where we were and having to be evacuated. Giving treatments suddenly in the most bizarre places that people are used to a clinic setting, and speeding up treatments to be able to treat multiple people. I mean, we served in places that I'd never imagined would even be a thing in life. I mean, I'm talking, we gave treatments one day at the front of a cemetery. We gave treatments in fields. We gave treatments in community centres, police stations, car parks, the side of the road, literally wherever we needed to be. I didn't have any massage tables. I'm not a therapist. I've never done anything like this. I've worked in business my whole life. I don't know how to do this. Not just that, my Hebrew wasn't very good, and I had to suddenly navigate in Hebrew. Another really surprising challenge was from around October 11th or 12th, there was no GPS in the north at all. for the
Even
safety
now.
of our soldiers. Just now they've opened it up since we went into Lebanon on the ground in October. We have had, most of the time, have had GPS, but we didn't have any GPS whatsoever. And I did not know how to drive around up there. It is difficult. I now know the North extremely well, but I did not know the North. Even though it's always been a fantasy of mine, or a goal of mine, shall I say, to move there. I didn't know what I was doing. I had a tiny Mazda 2. I had to borrow massage tables. I had to borrow a roof rack. I had to find people and squeeze them. It was all just really mad, to be honest with you. So that was probably the initial stuff. And getting the name out there and finding more practitioners. I just was figuring it out literally as I was going along. Then I had to figure out how to open a non-profit. I've never worked in a non-profit before, never mind open one. And the laws are super strict on how you do it, and it was a whole system that I honestly, without my business coaches, I don't even think it would have been possible. But I was determined to do what we did. The biggest challenges we have now are A, getting our name around the world and what we're doing and what our future goals are, and B, working out how to fund it. Up until today, I haven't paid a single person, not a single person. I cover the transportation, I pay all the gas. There's been times where I didn't have the money to pay the gas for people. But I haven't had an opportunity to hire anyone, even myself, or to hire volunteers, anything. And I kept thinking, how long are people going to volunteer from? Right now, I am desperately trying to get funded. When you open a new non-profit in Israel, you're not eligible for any government funding for the first 2 years. You have to prove that you're a real non-profit.
Wow.
And it's not fake. So we run purely on private donations, which can be $10, can be, I think the biggest we've had is I think we've had $2,000, and then we had one person give us $5,000 at the beginning to help, and recently a foundation just donated us $35,000, which is great because I need to buy some urgent equipment that I've been waiting for months. But I want to build a future here. Not just for myself, not just for the volunteers, not just for the soldiers, but for the future generations of our children. And that means that I need to be able to get staff. And then I need to be able to open a clinic. And then I want to open what's called a balance house, a holistic live-in therapy home. And this is going to take me somewhere around $10 to $15 million to get going. I don't know where to find money. There's a lot of money out there. I know there's money in the world. I just don't know where it is. And so my challenge is always looking for people who might know the right person to put me in touch with, who might believe in what we're doing. And when people hear about us, they get very passionate about believing in what we're doing. But we have been working with a very small group of volunteers trying to get our name out there from day one to today. And we've done amazing things, but it could be so much better if we were funded. It would be 1,000 times better if we were funded. I think another challenge on a personal level is coping with everything we see and hear. We have a core group of regular volunteers that I refer to as the family. And I refer to us as the family because we don't just help the soldiers, but we help each other get through it. We all notice when someone's not having a good day or going through a bad period, and we all help to work together to raise them back up. What we do on base days is the most phenomenal, uplifting feeling you could ever experience. But it is also very hard. You witness a lot of trauma. You hear a lot of what's happened. We've heard, I don't think there's anything that can surprise me from what soldiers have seen and done anymore. From guys telling me they can't get the smell of the South on October 7th and those first few days out of their nose. From working with soldiers who, we have one particular soldier who lost his son. He was serving reserve duty in the North, and his son was in the South, in Gaza. And whilst they were on an arranged phone call, his son was shot by snipers. And just seeing this pure broken father, not giving up on serving his country. Seeing people, soldiers who live abroad now, who have flown back and just abandoned their lives to serve their country. Seeing men, I mean, we have a group, there's a group of reserve police soldiers, and they go by Magav in Israel. And a lot of them are Druze. And they have not had more than 1 week off. They don't get more than a few days at a time for over a year now. So their families are suffering. To see so many soldiers have lost their businesses, see so many soldiers developing the beginnings of PTSD. But perhaps the hardest part is when we lose our soldiers. I've lost quite a few men that we've worked with this year since we went into Lebanon, because I only take care of the north. Not long ago, there's a unit that I had been working with since October last year, maybe November, and there was an incident where 3 of them were severely injured. 1 of them may never get a chance to walk again, and a 4th gentleman was killed, a 28-year-old gentleman called Sagi. I was terribly affected by it because we've worked with them many times. But seeing the effect it had on his unit friends, I don't know if I'll ever get that out of my mind. All of the commanders of the unit, the only way to describe the look in their eyes was almost as if someone had lined all their wives up in front of them and shot them point blank. It was so hard to see it, but it was also so magical to see them get some light back in their eyes at the end of the day full of treatments from us. We gave them a lot of work that day. It's hard to see our men coming in and out of combat zones. They come out for 2 hours, they get some help from us, and they go right back in. It's hard to see how many communities, both Arab and Israeli, that have been destroyed in the north, see the destruction. There's moments of this year, maybe 5 to 10, that will forever stick with me. Things that I never thought I would see in my life. A lot of time I feel like I'm living in a film. I grew up in London. The police there don't even carry guns.
Yeah.
I did not do the army. I've been in operational huts watching Hezbollah watching us, knowing that if I went just 100 meters forward, I'd be shot dead. I've watched the Iron Dome go off all day long right next to me as I'm giving treatments, and see my own triggers being triggered and jumping out my skin. Watching artillery, which, the way everyone deals with it is with humour, because it's the best way to deal with it. And, sometimes I write notes on rockets saying, this is for this person. But the reality is that artillery units, they're not killers, are men. We're not natural killers in this country, no matter how hard you're trained for it. We're people that really, really believe in life. There was a female prime minister in Israel many, many years ago by the name of Golda Meir, and she said something extremely, extremely important that has become her legacy. She said, war will not stop until they love their children more than they hate us. Because the fundamentalism of Judaism is that we value life upon anything else. No matter how religious you are, on the Sabbath, it is a sin not to break the Sabbath if you can save someone's life or they need medical emergency care. It is a sin. Life becomes over everything. And when men are working in artillery, they have to joke around to keep themselves going. But in reality, when you shoot off a missile, you know it's going to hurt someone or attention to hurt something. That's not natural for us. That's not the way we're raised.
So you think they hate Jewish more than loving their children?
Absolutely. And that is something that I think every Israeli believes in, because how much proof do you need to see that they use their children as shields, that they put their children in front of them so that we won't shoot them, because they know we're not going to kill an innocent child? How much proof do you need that they work out of kindergartens and schools and tunnel entrances in the children's bedrooms? How much proof do you need that we find rifles and grenades under baby mattresses? On October 7th, babies were burnt in ovens. Our children, our babies, were burnt in our ovens. They turned our ovens on to torture our babies. There was a woman, a pregnant woman, whose baby was cut out of her and murdered as she was dying. What did that child do? You hate us so much? We would never do something like that. Never. I don't believe this is the fundamental of Islam. I do not believe that deep down in the Quran it says you must murder all of us. I do not believe that for a moment. I do not believe that all Muslims are bad for a moment. I believe the extremists are twisting it. And they don't care who we are or what we are, but we are Jewish, therefore we must die. We must be annihilated from this world. And unfortunately, what the majority of the world, in particular the Western world, don't understand is they don't care if you're not Jewish. If you are not with them, they want you dead. How can we not believe in that statement? And that is the truth. You know, you see Israeli soldiers handing out sweets and water to the children who are abandoned in Gaza. You see that they literally put their children out in front of them. Those children never had a chance. Never. Their first words, they're taught to say, stab, stab, stab. Their first thing in kindergarten is to take rifles and say, shoot the Jews. What chance does that human being ever have? They don't love their children enough to teach them the value of life.
Why they are so extreme, and why they have so much hate for the Jewish?
It's a very good question. I'm not sure I have the answer. It's one of those questions that could thousands of years be. But I think my personal opinion, there's two I have. My personal opinion is they're terrorist groups. They're not the people who represent Muslims. Hezbollah, Hamas, jihadists, ISIS, these are terrorist organizations. I don't believe they represent Islam at all. How can they? In the same way that I don't believe in any other religion, KKK, represent Christianity, white people. They don't. In every culture you have these hate groups because that's human nature, unfortunately. And what I think people sometimes overlook is they may not be the biggest, but they are the loudest. They make the most noise to make people feel they are the biggest. And that's one thing. My other belief is from a religious aspect. If you look at what's written in the Jewish Bible and the Torah, we are basically first cousins with Arabs. We come from the same. This whole thing about the world saying, go back to where you came from. My grandfather came from Yemen. Well, it was Aden at the time, but he came from Yemen. My savta comes from Jerusalem. My grandmother comes from Jerusalem. She's 7th generation from Jerusalem. Most of my friends' parents and grandparents came from Iraq, came from Iran, came from Persia, came from Turkey. What do you mean go back to where we came from? We grew up, we were born in the Middle East. That's where we were born. Most of them came from Judea and Samaria. How can you say that go back to where you come from? I did not come from Poland. I did not come from America. Yes, I was born in England, but my father was born in Israel. His parents were born in Israel and Yemen. What do you mean go back to where you came from? So in the Bible, the story is, or what's written is, there was twins who were born, Esav and Yaakov. And they fought in the womb. They were physically fighting in the womb. And God said to their father, they will be the light of two nations, but they will always fight. And Esav was very angry that he was covered in thick body hair and he wasn't beautiful and people didn't like him. And Yaakov was beautiful and a person with modesty, and people took to him. And although Esav was the firstborn, his father decided to bless Yaakov with being the leader upon the Jews. And they separated and they fought. And that's where the Jewish people and the Islamic come from. That is the line. So Jewish people go, but they're our cousins. Literally, that's how we feel, but they're our cousins. And Islamic people say, you stole our birthright. And who is ever going to know the deep, deep, deep truth? Because who was alive 4,000 years ago? But that is what we are taught. That is what we believe. That is what is written in our Bible. And I think that it comes from deep-rooted generational hate. I mean, what is the great answer? Why was there a Holocaust? Why was there World War II?
Yeah.
Why do you hate us so much? We are 0.2% of the world. That's insane! There's something like 16 million Jews in the world. Do you know how tiny that is? That's insane. And there's like 8 million of them living in Israel. How crazy is it that they hate us so much and we are the tiniest? What? You know what we're taught as Jewish kids? They hate us the most because our job is bigger in the world. Our job is to bring light into the world. And our job is to trust in God and bring love into the world. And they don't want good. I don't know what they're taught from babies if they're not extremists. But I do know that I've had plenty of Muslim friends over the years who don't hate us. So that's all I can say. That's my personal opinion. I think everybody has to make their own.
So back to the topic. What do you think the biggest need that the soldier currently lead? And within the context of Israeli culture and background, what things that you think is important, very important for the soldier?
I think there's a few things. I think they need to know that the world is behind them and not fully against them. I can't imagine what it's like. Most of them have served over 300 days this year. And it's exhausting. It's exhausting in every which way. You can feel the energy in Israel. People are tired. People are very tired. This has been a very, very hard, what are we now, 435 days in? We still have 100 live hostages. We hope live hostages in Gaza. We're exhausted. Why is the world not screaming for them? Why is the world not demanding to know where Ariel and Kfir Bibas, the youngest hostages, are, and if they're alive? How can that be? We're talking about a 10-month-old baby that was kidnapped that is now almost 2. That's crazy. In January, he's going to be 2. 2 nights ago, a 12-year-old boy was killed on a bus coming home. Why is the world not screaming about this? I think people are exhausted here, and I think we need to know that there is support behind us. I think the soldiers really need what we give them. a very big amount of the soldiers will personally come to me and tell me, what you give us here is more impactful than anything else we've seen or received this year from anywhere. It's not that they don't appreciate the letters of love and the packages and the drones and the helmets. They need this stuff. But we give them help with their sleep, with their emotional state, with their energy state, with love. And a lot of them have also said something to me that I thought was really interesting. Quite a large amount of my volunteers are retirement age and up. We have volunteers all the way up to 79 years old. And I would say that a big chunk of them are 50 plus. Majority chunk of them. And quite a few soldiers have come to me over the year and said, the fact that a lot of your volunteers are older and are mothers is so important, because
Why?
we need touch, we need love, and we need a hug, because everybody's broken. And I think what we can give them by just being there. Yesterday we found, just from conversation, a soldier who has a 6-month-old baby with Down syndrome, and we directed him to one of our volunteers who had a child with Down syndrome and then went on and adopted another 4 children with Down syndrome. And she sat with him for about half an hour and just gave him hope on how the life could look. That's massive. Can you imagine how worried he is? And he's in the army. He doesn't get to be at home with his wife and his child. Just the amount of them at the end of the day that come to us and say, can I hug you again? Can I just give you one more hug? What you did for me was so important today. I've had soldiers say to me, I haven't had quiet inside for months and months and months. I just had an hour of pure quiet in my head. That is so important. I can't imagine being in an army state, in a constant fight or flight state in that way for 435 days. And what we give them is this sense of, again, the fundamental of what I truly believe is, we are one. We're here with you. They said to me at the beginning, why are you doing this? Why did you give up your life for this? You're not in the army. This isn't your job. And I was like, no, it is my job. This is my army service. You're out here. I'm out here. And a lot of the time I had people saying, but where we are is in a very dangerous area. And I say, well, I always tell my volunteers the truth. This is where we're going. And if you are not comfortable, please do not come. I never ask from people to give more than they can. Ever, ever, ever. But the core family of Chayal's Angels all believe the same. If you're out there, we can be out there. And I tell them, I have just 2 rules. I start every day with a small speech to the soldiers of explaining who we are, what we do, how I can help them. We have lots of different channels. We just today opened a Spotify account of meditations and sound healing for them. And I tell them I have just 2 rules. 1, please respect everybody in my team because they work so hard and I can't pay a single person. And 2, when you are on our tables, you are not to look at the phone. Unless it is the head of the army phoning you, do not pick up that phone, because you are out here literally guarding our lives every day. And for the few hours I have you, we are here to guard yours. It's massive.
It's so nice. What is your future plan for your organization? Anything that particular you want to do, or anything you want to say, like, come on, support us, like, give me donation, or like...
Well, I have big plans. Big plans that I have no idea how to fulfill, but I do know they will happen. First is to get staff so that we can grow to the next stages. I want to open a clinic where any reservist who has served in this war will be able to come and get heavily subsidized treatments, including everything we currently provide: nutrition classes, social workers, psychologists, psychiatrists, trauma classes, all sorts of things, and create a hub for them as well. And then I want to open what is called a Beit Me'al Zen in Hebrew, a balance home, which is a live-in holistic program where people can come and live for 6 to 8 weeks who are suffering with post-trauma from this war or the reservists. And it came from an idea of a place that I went to in Israel when I had a nervous breakdown. And it was the best gift of my life. I was 35 years old, and I never imagined that I could get anything like this. It was like going to, the famous Priory clinic. It was unbelievable. I had 8 a.m. a job to do, 9 a.m. until 6 p.m. we had classes every day. And then we had a gathering together at the end of every day, and then we had an evening free. And there was no phones for the first 3 weeks whatsoever. After that, you get your phone for 1 hour a night. You do acupuncture, shiatsu, kung fu lessons, music lessons, all kinds of, sorry, that's my phone, all kinds of, let me just turn it off so it doesn't beep. I knew you were going to call me now. You do all kinds of different therapy sessions, like a workshop like that's called gibberish, where you literally, instead of talking or writing real words, you speak gibberish, and you have a conversation with someone that goes, but what you're doing is telling them all the trauma in you right now, all the things that are causing you anxiety without having to speak. These tools are so phenomenal. They sound so stupid at the beginning, but they're amazing. We had art therapy, we had sports therapy, we had talk therapy, we had private psychologist sessions, private psychiatrist sessions. We were given social workers to help us get through the government programs to make sure we could get the right help. I mean, we had a bedtime, we had a wake up time. And at first it's really hard as an adult to go into that and suddenly have like this really heavy routine, and it was everybody, you see everybody who comes in new struggles with it. By the end of the program, every single session throughout the week made pure sense to me, not only having been there, but the session timing of which day it was. So for instance, we start our week on a Sunday. The first session on Sunday was a movement class to open you up again. The last session on Thursday, which is the end of our week, was a music jam, just getting you back to calm down. In the middle of the week, we had the heavy stuff. It was very cleverly put, very, very clever. So I hope to be able to do something like this and help the PTSD. But I even have a dream further than that, and that is to open our own moshav, our own village, where we can bring in sustainable housing. I have a deep interest for many years and a wish to be able to find a way to bring earthships to Israel. And I envision that we will have an area with animals and an area of growing agriculture, and that the people who come to live in the house will get 2 hours a day of working the ground because it's so therapeutic. And that the people who live in the community will all be people who are supporting open conversation, therapy, lifestyle, holistic lifestyle, and really take away the stigma of trauma, which has become a buzzword in the last couple of years. Oh, my trauma, oh, my trauma, oh, my trauma. But then you bring up the word suicide and everyone clamps back up. And I want to get rid of that. In the same way that I don't believe women should be silent. And I know this is a very touchy subject, not just in the Middle East, not just in Asia, but also in the Western world. Talking about your menstrual cycle. It really bothers me that I was raised in a generation where we were told to whisper it, and that we weren't given real education on what our menstrual cycles were. I know that almost my entire generation grew up not knowing when you could actually get pregnant. And I know that men my age don't have any idea about that. That's awful. This is like the most everyday impactful thing we need to learn about. Why should we whisper about it? Half the population have a cycle. And it impacts every day, which means it then impacts the other half of the population. So in the same manner as that, I want to take away the stigma of talking about suicide. So at every base day that I do, I bring up that subject and I tell them about my experience in brief, and I tell them the reason I'm telling you this is that nobody is immune to it and it shouldn't be a secret. And if you are struggling, please come to me. I will find you the right help, I promise you. And many soldiers do, and I send them private sessions on their days out, whether it be a chiropractor, a physiotherapist, a psychologist, whatever it is they need, Reiki. Let me help you. Because if you don't get the right help, you have a high risk of not making it. And then what chance have our future generations got? I want to save the future generations as much as I do these guys. So yeah, I have really big plans. I don't know how it's going to happen, but there's so many people who believe in what I believe in, and I feel that I was given this task for a reason, because I don't take no for an answer.
I believe you can do this.
Me too.
Yeah.
It's gonna happen.
If you got a plan, you must can do that. Thank you for accepting our interview today.
Thank you for the honor.
Thank you so much.